In this example, we're going to look at another way of harmonizing melodies. In the other examples that I showed you, we harmonized every note of the melody with a chord, with its own chord. But that's not always the way that you would harmonize a melody. For example, if I were harmonizing a melody like the Ash Grove, maybe the chords would just change every measure, or every two measures, something like that, rather than for every note. When we change chords for every note, that's more of a hymn style or a chorale style. But if we're harmonizing a folk tune like this, that probably wouldn't sound quite right. So let me play for you the melody by itself. Okay, so you listen to the melody and decide about how often you'd like to change the chords. And then the next thing to do is to examine the melody for arpeggiations, how it emphasizes pitches on the beat. So for example, if I'm looking at this first measure, I have a G on beat 1, a B on beat 2, a D on beat 3. So those emphasized pitches emphasize a G chord. Then I can just have this be a passing tone. I don't need to harmonize the C. Alright, so that seems like a good decision. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the first measure is going to be a G chord or a 1 chord. The second measure has a B, a G, and a G. Okay, so those would easily fit in the same chord. We could continue the 1 chord here. So let's have that as an option. Or we could harmonize this E, G, B with a 6th chord. So that should also be an option. Put that in here too. Alright, moving on to the next measure, we have a lot of notes here. Some of these are going to belong in the chord and some are not. But if I look at the notes that are occurring on the beats again, I have A, C sharp, A. So ideally I'm going to want to write a chord that has an A and a C sharp in it. So that could be an A, C sharp, E chord, which would be 2. Or it could be an F, A, C sharp. Sorry, there's no C sharp. It's just F sharp, A, C, right? Okay, so it could be 7 chord. Alright, another possibility that you should always keep in mind is if I went down again, a 5-7 chord. The 5 often has a 7, so it could be D, F sharp, A, C. So let's put that in there as an option as well. Okay. Moving into the next measure, obviously we have a D and an F sharp. So D, F sharp, A would be a likely choice. So on the 5 chord, or a 5-7, you could of course put a 7th on anything, any 5 that is. Could also be B, D, F sharp. Right. That is a 3 chord. And I think that's all we're going to try now. Okay, moving to the next measure. There's a G in this harmony. And then the other notes that are emphasized on the beat are B and G. So I'm going to want to use a chord with a G and a B in it. One of those is a 1 chord. And then an E, G, B chord would be a 6 chord again. Okay, moving to the next measure. Whoops. Uh-oh. A little crazy there. Okay, we got it. Moving to the next measure, we have an E and a C sharp. Okay, so I keep saying C sharp. It's a C natural. Okay, C and E. C, E, G would be a 4 chord. That's good. What's the other choice? Yep, A, C, E, right? So A, C, E would be a 2 chord. We get 2 good choices there. Okay, now we're moving towards the end. And I'm looking at these notes, D, G, and F sharp. It seems pretty clear to me that I can't put a G and an F sharp in the same chord, right? Because they would clash with one another. So either one of those is not going to be in the chord, or something that often happens in in harmonization, towards the end of the phrase, the chord progression is going to speed up. The harmonic progression is going to speed up at the cadence. So I'm going to keep that in mind. But if I try to put this D and the G together, it could be a GBD chord. That would be a 1. Okay, that sounds fine. And then what would have an F sharp in it that would, if we go to the, let's just go to the 1 at the end, right? Because it's in G major. And I want a solid cadence, so can I get a 5 there? Yeah, 5 is the D, F sharp A. So I'm going to put a 5 there. So this looks pretty good, right? A 1, 5, 1 progression at the end. And it's sped up a little bit in that last measure. We were consistently doing 1 chord per measure, and it sped up right at the end. So there aren't too many things we need to choose from here. I can see a few things I can eliminate. 4 to 1 would work better than 2 to 1, so I take that 2 out. There's some other options. Let's see. So if I chose the 6 in this measure, could I get away from the 6 to one of these other chords? I can go to 2, right? 6, 2. So that would work. And then can I get from the 2 to something in the next measure? 2 to 5? Yeah, that works. Not 3. Okay, so we can eliminate this 3. And then, let's see, 5 can go to 6 there, or to 1. Either one of those would work fine. So there's multiple options. So I'm going to make some choices here. I'm going to go with the circle of fifths again. That's always a good choice. So I'm going to go 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. Happens to be the one on the top there. That's great. So we have 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. That sounds great. Okay, so there's the progression that I've worked out. The next thing that I need to do is I'm just going to write some block chords to, let's see here, hold on a second. Wigging out again. I'm going to bring in another staff here and write some simple block chords in another staff to give me those harmonies. Okay, so if I put a G chord here, and then a 6 chord, then a 2 chord, G, A, right? Let's put it down here. Notice this is just for temporary purposes because this is awful voice leading, isn't it? Okay, we just want to see if it's going to sound okay. My 5 chord, and then back to the 1 chord, and then the 4 chord, and what I want to do with this is I want to actually make that not a regular 1 but a 1, 6, 4, because I know that's going to work well. Going to my 5 cadential, whoops, can't fit another half note in there, can I? And then okay, so we know that this is not particularly good voice leading, but it should give me a sense of how it's going to sound. So let me play this harmonization for you now. Great. Okay, so that works pretty well. So the next step, if you wanted to do this correctly, you would take these 3 voices, the bass and the inner voices, and do correct voice leading so that they move nicely from chord to chord, just like we've done for other examples. But just sketching out the chords in this way and putting in some block chords, you can tell that this is a good progression and it's going to support the melody very well. So that's the basic approach to harmonizing the folk tune. Try to figure out a consistent pattern of harmonic change. In this case it was once per measure. It could be twice per measure. If it was, for example, in 4/4, it could change on beat 1 and beat 2, 3. Or it might even change every other measure, and it may be the case that it doesn't change consistently. And remember also that melodies, the harmonization tends to speed up at the cadence. Okay, so that is an example of harmonizing a folk tune.